I just had a hot shower just before, and as you can see, I haven't become a hot soup. And that's only because of the cell membrane which actually protects the components inside of it. And let's simplify the major constituent of the cell membrane, and that is the phospholipid. The cell membrane or the plasma membrane is actually a semi-permeable barrier which actually regulates the inward movement or the outward movement of the molecules within the cell. The membrane is having a bilayer structure, and this bilayer is actually made of a lipid which is known as a phospholipid. This is the structure of glycerol, and glycerol acts as the backbone for the phospholipid formation. The second constituent of the phospholipid is a fatty acid. A fatty acid simply means a long chain carboxylic acid. That is, a long chain of carbon atoms is actually bound to a carboxyl group. The hydroxyl group on the glycerol can actually form an ester bond with the carboxyl group on the fatty acid. And as there are 3 hydroxyl groups in the glycerol, it can actually bind to 3 fatty acids, making a triacyl glycerol or a triglyceride. Now we have seen the structure of the triglycerides. And in order to make a phospholipid, we actually need to swap one of those fatty acids with a hydrophilic phosphate group. So finally what we get is a hydrophobic head in here, and the glycerol is actually acting as a backbone, and there are 2 tails of the fatty acids, and it is actually hydrophobic. The term hydrophilic means water loving, and the term hydrophobic means water hating. So such a molecule with these both characters is known as an amphipathic molecule. And now we have the phospholipid, which is actually the basic building block of the cell membrane, and they arrange themselves into the bilayer due to the hydrophobic interactions. The term phobia means hate or fear. I'll give you an example. I have a little brother and he loves dogs. In case of me, I'm afraid of them. And one day on a walk, we saw a dog. But I was really afraid of it, but my brother actually came near it and gave it a hug. So he was very friendly with him, and I was able to hide behind him, Even though this is a hypothetical story, this is what happens in the case of the formation of a cell membrane. When the phospholipid molecule is exposed to water, the water-loving phosphate part will stay in contact with water, and the water-hating lipid part will stay away from water. In order to do that, they actually form a sphere-like structure in which the hydrophilic phosphate groups are present on the outer side, and the hydrophobic lipid is present in the inner side, and it is safe from the water. Such a construction is known as micelle, and as you might have imagined, the inner side of a micelle is also hydrophobic. In the case of a cell, there is water inside and outside of the membrane. In order to do that, there is actually 2 layers of phospholipid, and these boundaries are actually formed by the phosphate group, and hence it is hydrophilic. And the inner side is actually formed by the lipid, and hence it is hydrophobic. So it is thermodynamically feasible. And these 2 membranes arrange themselves into the sphere-shaped bilayer, and it is actually forming the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane also includes several other components like proteins and carbohydrates. Liposomes are the vesicles which are produced by the removal of proteins from the plasma membrane. Essentially, it is the simple lipid bilayer. They are important in several aspects like delivering drugs into the cell and also delivering the genetic material which is actually needed for genetically modifying a cell. Snapshot time. In today's video, we have studied the structure of the phospholipid, which is actually acting as the building block of the cell membrane. You might have heard of serine and ethanolamine, and maybe even sphingolipids. And what are those things? We will be discussing those topics in the next video. That was your 3 minutes. See you in the next one.